Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, a couple of days ago, I kind of explored the beginnings of stealth and being able to complete missions without being detected, and kind of hit on a few things that I kind of wanted to come back and talk about because I think there was a few misperceptions out there, but it seems that from what I was able to see, when I was doing these missions and I was going out and I was hitting up these satellites and switching them off, I was gaining crime stat rating, but my signature wasn't such that I was immediately getting aggressed by NPCs. Now I've gone forth and tried to replicate that as many times as possible, and it seems that in the current build of things that seems to hold true. Now some people were asking about, well, if the ghost works, how does the saber work? Well, the saber works pretty much the same way. I haven't gone and checked the numbers against each other, but I've run into no issues with the saber, and obviously the cutlass does it too. So I'm not sure what the thresholds are mathematically. That is something that would require some much more intensive testing, but for right now, with a reasonable degree of caution, I think you can move around, stealth out, and complete missions. Now, is there a point to any of it? Well, yes and no. You see, all these things could change. All these values could change and are going to change 100 times. And having the knowledge today, having the basic knowledge that this works, right? That this is how you do it, this works right now, that can help inform people into the future. Now, when I said, it would require much more intensive testing, let's say we came up with a table of values that said, for X amount of signature in this range and X amount of signature in that range, you should go undetected up until 1,500 meters. That data, that information is probably the most likely end of things that are going to change. That is probably going to be something that is going to be entirely fluid throughout the lifetime of the game. Once new sensor systems are introduced and you can plug in different sensor systems or different components that might get you lower EM or IR signatures, things like that, a lot of things can really change in a big way. Sorry about the rough takeoff here, but for some reason the game was acting up a little bit. So anyways, yeah, like those absolute values, those can change 100 times, but the basic idea, the basic foundation of it is something that is unlikely to see any real change. Or if it is, it's going to be very slow and over time. It's kind of a, I would say it's a knowledge set or a skill set that only comes from playing video games or a particular game for a long period of time. Sort of like if I were to take my World of Warcraft experience and say that anything that I knew as a rogue in Burning Crusade and in Wrath of the Lich King doesn't really apply in terms of stat priorities, in terms of all that, in terms of what's best in slot trinket, this thing, that thing. None of that applies anymore. None of that applies. But the basic foundational elements of how do I build my keybinds, how do I recognize what abilities to use in concert with other abilities, that sort of thing, that kind of foundation helps me build forward. So even though, like, I'm a player who quit during Pandaria and came back right at the end of Warlords of Draenor just in time for Legion, I still had enough pieces of the puzzle that even though I didn't know all the things that I was supposed to know, I knew enough that I knew where to go looking for that information, and I had enough personal experience to know that you don't always have all the answers. Don't go off your own ideas. Go out and collect as many ideas as you can, bring them together, and that's where you're going to find your success. And that's what led me to having the successful experience I had during Legion. Now, in terms of Star Citizen, being able to look at the game and say, okay, I gotta do certain keybinds. I gotta have a stealth keybind. I'm gonna have to figure that out somehow. Make a quick button to toggle it on and toggle it off. I'm gonna have to look into figuring out those things. That kind of thinking, it builds a good foundation for it in the future. Like if you have all this worked out, like, oh, here's how I'm gonna arrange on my keybinds. I play on a Logitech G13. So if if the keybinds are changed in game, I can just go into the application that controls it, and I can just change the keybinds manually in there, and then all my buttons still work the way I want them to work. Even though CIG might move buttons around here, there, and everywhere, it doesn't matter to me, because I just have to then take that and then go into the application and move those buttons to where I want them on my G13, where they've always been, so that way I'm always kind of doing the same thing, even though they've changed the keybind 100 times. Now, of course, that's true of other control devices. Certainly gamepads, joysticks, you can change the buttons to be whatever you want. And with certain joysticks and with certain gamepads, you can even program them to have combinations of button pushes. You can make it so that the hat switch on your joystick to a certain degree can aim your guns for you. Depending on the hat switch and depending on how well you have things set up, you can do things like that. But I find that the fluidity that the G13 gives me is something that, it just gives you so many options and so many ways to tie certain things together. So that even, let's say, if you're strafing up or you're strafing down and you're circling someone and you're shooting and you need to hit flares, with certain people's setups, I often find that, like, when I'm looking at certain people's setups and they're explaining, here's what I have mapped to this, here's what I have mapped to that, sometimes if you're seeing yourself holding that controller and doing what they're doing, you're going like, oh shit, they're using their thumb to release flares, but that's the same finger that they're using to control their strafe direction. Well, what if you have to strafe up and hit flares at the same time? And with the G13, you can just make it all very fluid and make hundreds of possible combinations. So I tend to prefer that method. And a lot of how I do that and a lot of how I build that out is because basically I taught myself how to use this thing playing in the end of Wrath of the Lich King and the beginning of Cataclysm. I used this to play WoW, and I realized, oh my god, this has actually broader applications out in other games. It was kind of like that foundation kind of carried me forward into other games. But when we're talking about things like stealth, like here I am now, I'm approaching my target, and I'm going to kick it into stealth real soon as I get really close to this target. Now you might be saying, oh, well, what's the point? But it allows me to creep up on people, possibly seen, possibly not seen. I don't know. There might be people at this location. It's kind of like the old fighter pilot adage, the guy who sees the other guy first is usually the guy who wins the fight. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of going in there. I'm going in there quietly. I'm going to sniff things out and see if there's possibly hostiles there, because once I see them, even if I'm 20 kilometers away, if I see them before they see me, then I immediately have an advantage over them. But now we're kind of drifting into things like the OODA loop. Now, the OODA loop is kind of, it's a topic that is worthy of a Wikipedia search and some of your time. But just quickly, observe, orient, decide, act. That is the basics of the OODA loop. And how it applies to a situation like this is, if I see the other guy first, I observe him first. Then I can start to orient. I can start to decide, do I want to fight? Do I not want to fight? Is this a worthwhile fight? What position do I have to be in to take this guy on? That sort of thing. What do I need to know? I am now making these decisions, and it's kind of a model on human thought, and then I can act, and then the feedback from those actions goes back to observe, and then we repeat the process. But I now have a decided advantage. If I spot the other guy first, I can begin that thought process, and I can begin to observe, orient, decide, act prior to them even being able to observe that I'm there, much less coming up with a strategy for how to handle me. So some people might say, oh, well, what's the point of looking into stealth? It's not even finished. The video is pointless. But the truth is that if I were to sit here and say this ship detects me at 1,600 meters versus this ship detects me at 1,800 meters, yeah, that would pretty much be a useless video because that value is going to change 1,000 times. But the basic premise of does it work, can it work, that is what's the value. That's the takeaway. I mean, we could spend hours testing out and trying to come up with tables to define this thing, but those are going to change. But the principles, the basic foundation of the idea is what we should be testing and seeing, does it work? Does it hold water? Can it work for us? Now, as you can see, I'm beginning my approach to this wreck site. I'm in a low power state, and I may be facing competition. I may not. But what I do see is that there is another ship there. I don't know what that ship is, because, you know, once again, those pesky HUD elements, not like we ever really needed them, right, are not there. But we have a fair idea that it's probably going to be a ship that can carry some form of cargo. I see him, he doesn't see me. Do I proceed? Yeah, let's get a little closer and find out what's going on. Now, am I observed? Am I not observed? I don't know. Now, I don't have any of the instrumentation. Possibly that's a component or a UI element to come later that tells me that I've been detected. So I have to just kind of rely on blind luck. But even if this guy spots me right now, even if he sees me right now, I already have an advantage over him because I am already further ahead in the decision-making process. I am looking at him and I'm going, okay, I kind of know what the situation is now. I'm understanding that I'm looking at a constellation. What might I be facing? Could the guy be in a ship? Could he not be in a ship? But he might just spot me right now and go, oh my God, a cutlass. What do I do? What do I do? Oh, I got to get back to my ship. I'm already steps ahead of him, if he's on his ship or not. So I'm able to kind of look at him, test out the idea, get a lock, and think about, well, do I want to pick this fight? Do I not want to pick this fight? I'm already ahead of the game. And stealth, even if it doesn't work out to X range or whatever, if you can at least see the other guy first, then that gives you an advantage. So I'm thinking, should I? Shouldn't I? Is he in his ship? Is he not in his ship? So I decide to fire. Now you might be wondering why my ship is flying so slowly. Now it's not that I forgot that I was in stealth mode, so my ship is operating in low energy mode. It's nothing like that. No, dude. This is tactics right now. This is like SEAL Team 6 type tactics because I'm just shooting his ship slowly so that it'll draw him back into his ship in case he's not in it. And, you know, that way I don't have to worry about there being somebody hiding in the wreck if I blow it up right away. You know what I mean? It's tactics. I didn't forget, man. I didn't forget. Not at all. This frenzied reaching for the power button, yeah, no. All well-rehearsed, well-oiled machine, bro. Straight up. But once again, now I have an advantage. Now that you might say that advantage is disintegrating, but luckily it appears that whoever it is doesn't have that much control over their weapons, and their weapons seem to be flying directly off the same axis as their ship. So I can pretty much infer that circle strafing is
probably going to be the way to go. And I should just keep circling this guy and just beating him down with these size 2 guns and waiting for him to pop. Now, some people might look at this and say, oh, wow, dude, you're being mean. That guy didn't do anything to you. And the truth is, one could see it that way. But the truth is also that I have been doing missions like this for quite some time, and I have been, you know, once again, I have been spontaneously attacked by people who have just turned up. So I consider this more defensive gameplay. Yeah, we'll go with that. Defensive gameplay, because it's better to initiate than to have to react. And so I'm just going to go ahead, take the initiative, and try to control the situation. Now, I'm not too sure what the plan was here. I'm kind of observing the ship and the way it's moving, and I'm thinking it's a joystick pilot. I know some people might find that an inflammatory comment, but in general, by the way the ship is moving around and flying around, I'm really thinking that this is probably a joystick user who still hasn't mapped his, you know, horizontal and vertical strafe functions whatsoever, because he's not really circling. He just seems to be trying to fly around and occasionally cut inwards and try to make an attack run on me. So, yeah, I'm not too sure what he's doing. But then again, after initiating, you have to finish it. You can't just, you know, let the guy fly away and then possibly come back and then start shooting you while you're EVAing. So you got to do what you got to do. But it looks like, whoops, yeah. I meant to do that. I totally meant to do that. That was just to like throw him off, you know. That's like my tactics, bro. It's my tactics. SEAL Team 6, dude, straight up. But yeah, it looks like he's mostly in a powered down state and he's coming apart at the seams. So we're just gonna go ahead and finish this off. Any second now. Any second now. Connie's, they take a lot of hits. Well, that's that. So now we're going to move in and check out the wreck that we had originally come here to check out. Now, once I get into a situation where I leave the ship, now the clock is running because I'm obviously not going to be in my ship. I'm not going to have access to my sensors. So if anybody creeps up on me, and this is, of course, a mission, so this is a publicly broadcasted location. So I have to be quick, and I have to kind of go out there, grab what I need to grab, and then get out of there. Now, of course, if I was working in a team in conjunction with other people, I could have someone kind of paying attention and watching out while I'm doing this. But I am flying solo, so we're just going to have to go ahead and chance it, hop out, grab what we're here to grab, then go in for the mission completion. Yep, that bug is still here. Good to know, good to know. Could be worse. I mean, those could be walls that I can't traverse. That would be a real pain in the ass, but I mean, it's just a graphical bug, so whatever. So here we go. We just got to float out now. Remember, once you do something like that, you're kind of on the clock because he might be calling out in local saying, oh my God, somebody just attacked me here. Go kill them, blah, blah, blah. You know, the clock is ticking, so to speak. So we just got to get back onto the ship and bounce. That's all we got to do. It's just that easy. It's just that easy. Just gotta float onto the ship. Just nice and easy. Just touch it. Just kiss it, man. Just what? What? Oh. What? Yeah. What the hell? Now, it's kind of hidden right now, but we are going to find the cutlass in just a moment. Let's see, where is it? Maybe I should just fast forward to the discovery. No, here we are. What? That looks kind of like the rear end of a cutlass. But, that can't be my cutlass. My cutlass was fine. And that down on the lower center right by my HUD, that looks almost like the front half of a cutlass. And uh-oh. Wait a minute. God, there's got to be another cutlass here somewhere. I mean, maybe this was the cutlass of the pirates who attacked that ship. It can't be my cutlass, can it? You know what? Karma's a bitch.